Um, so welcome everyone. I hope you are all doing well. Some of you we just saw yesterday. We've got a pretty big group for this session of the course, but we're really excited. I want to share with you all just in advance before we get started, a thought catcher that we've created. So I just shared it in the chat. Some of you may have seen it in the message I sent before the webinar. But if you would like to use this to just kind of take notes, capture your ideas, that you have that option. And then also, if everyone could just put themselves on mute, and then if we need to, we can come off of mute, but just for the sake of things going smoothly here. All right, let me just share my screen. Okay, so can everyone give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Perfect. Okay, so welcome to part 2 of the course, Creating Engagement, Learning, and Networking Online. Welcome back. It's Becky, Emma, and Jeff are here again. So we're really excited that you all decided to come back for the second session of this course and kind of continue. We're going to continue along with some of the themes that we've learned in the first course. Dig a little bit deeper and kind of look at some strategies and tools that can help support both synchronous but also asynchronous learning. So meaning maybe not necessarily live and in person, but over the course of a week or something like that.
I can't see your screen, and I totally lost the screen. Sorry.
Is
and if everyone else can see it, maybe I'll log out and try to log back in.
Hey, this is Michelle. Can you all hear me?
Yep. Yes.
All right, great. I'm using my phone. Sorry, I'm actually doing a webinar in an hour myself, and I had to set up my computer for that. So.
Okay. So I'm not. It doesn't seem like. Is anyone else? If you're also having issues, can you type it in the chat box if you're having issues with your screen? I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I don't know who that was talking that said they had issues. But if you can,
it was also. Louise Elving. I lost the totals. I lost the screen except for the images of all the participants.
So maybe you can try joining, like leaving and then rejoining. That might work. So if you just exit the session and then come back in, maybe you'll be able to see my screen. And then if you're still having issues, you can just type it in the chat box, and Jeff and Emma or myself will try to walk you through it.
Okay.
Yeah, try leaving and logging back in, and then when you get in, if you can't see it, put it in the chat, and we'll try to work with you. Okay.
And we are recording, so just in case anybody else has issues or something happens, as it always does with technology, this will be recorded for you to review later. So in today's webinar, we're actually going to look at some different strategies and tools that you can use in an online environment with students and learners. So before we kind of jump into the content, we're going to use a tool called Padlet. And some of you may know it, some of you may not, but Padlet is a tool that you can use. It's like a virtual bulletin board, essentially. And so it's a free tool that it's very easy to use, and students or anyone can post ideas and do all sorts of things with Padlet. So I'm going to walk you through how it works, and then I'm going to pose a question to you, and you're going to respond to my question using the Padlet. So first, I'll just demonstrate how it works. So this is the Padlet that I've created for us. It looks like a chalkboard even. And so when you're using Padlet, I'll give you the URL, and you'll go to the board, and then you'll see that there's this little plus icon in the bottom. That's how you create a post. So anybody can do it. And then when you create your post, you would just put your name at the top and then like my ideas here. And then once you're done writing your ideas on your little virtual Post-it note, you can click anywhere outside of the note and it just automatically posts. You don't have to save or anything like that. Just a couple of other things before I kind of let you guys jump in and try it out. You'll also notice there are some features at the bottom. So it's a little bit better than an actual Post-it note because you can do all sorts of things. Like you can add images. I can actually directly add an image if I wanted to. Well, that's an image of Becky. I could do a Google search right in the pad, and I can insert images if I want to. So it's lots of really, really cool things you can do with it, but just that's the very, very quick overview of how to use Padlet. So the way that we're going to use it to start off today is I want you to think, I'll give you the URL in a second to go make your post. I'll put it in the chat. But I want you to think about these questions. So how does technology change the way we teach, and how does it change the way we learn? And then I just put a link in the chat box. So once you've kind of thought about how'd you like to respond to this, you can just click on that link and go to the Padlet and then add your name and then your ideas for your response to this question. And then we can see everybody's answers are coming in now. If you've already posted your response, now you can take this time and you can actually read your classmates, your fellow learners' responses. You'll notice that there's the ability to like responses. You can also comment if you wanted to, if you agree about something. So you can kind of interact with the post as well. So again, if you didn't get the questions, how does technology change the way we teach, and how does it change the way we learn? Just reading through all the responses here, I see some common themes. Maybe you do too.
How do I post?
How
I
do
was
we
looking.
post?
Yep, I'll walk you through how to post again. So when you come to the board, you should see just like on my screen here in the bottom right corner, you should see a little plus icon. You just click on that plus icon and it's going to create, it'll create it at the very bottom. So you have to scroll down to the bottom and it'll create a new little Post-it note, and you just type your name and your ideas and then just click anywhere to save it off of the post. Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't see any plus in the lower. Oh, now I see it.
Yep, you might have to scroll down a little bit.
I did.
So Padlet's a really cool tool. All you have to do is just kind of create a URL for your students or your learners, and there's lots of different options. This is just kind of one idea for using it. So what we're going to do now, most people have their ideas up here on our virtual chalkboard. We're going to now kind of analyze our fellow learners' responses, our classmates' responses. So what I would like for you to do is take a look at our chalkboard and see if you can identify among everyone's responses, are there common themes or ideas? And then you can jot those down actually in the chat, in the Zoom chat. So if you can look at everyone's responses here and see if you notice any common themes or common ideas. And then if any pop out at you, go ahead and just post those in the Zoom chat. Yeah, definitely. So I see more visual, obviously. You have to be visual. More prep time, that certainly is true. Reaching wider audiences, that's definitely one that I saw too, that kind of popped out. More visual and deliberate, yet harder to read students. So reading students occurs differently online than it does in person, that's for sure. So there has to be kind of a different approach to reading your learners. Okay, so I think clearly some themes emerged, some benefits and some challenges for sure. But I really want to choose to focus on the benefits. I've kind of built my career on educational technology, so I love it. And there certainly are challenges, but I think that we should try to focus on the benefits and like what we can really get and what opportunities we have with online learning and technology-enabled learning. And so one of the themes that definitely did emerge in your responses is that it's flexible. And who are our learners? They're adult learners. And so it allows for flexible learning opportunities anytime, anywhere, which is a huge benefit. Also, another common theme that emerged that you guys identified in the chat was that we have a farther reach. This class is happening today that traditionally we wouldn't be possible with a face-to-face learning, with a face-to-face environment where people are participating from all over the country. And so our reach is farther, and we can accommodate more learners, and also different types of learners. So meaning, some people don't learn well in a face-to-face environment, or they don't feel comfortable sometimes sharing their ideas, or they need more time to process. So, online learning really makes accommodations for learners that don't learn so well in like a live, face-to-face type session. And so those are just some of the benefits out of many, I think, of online learning. And yeah, it certainly is different than face-to-face, but we'll talk about some of those opportunities that we have. But before I move on to the next kind of topic, I wanted to just kind of call attention to what we just did. So that activity with the Padlet is called a chalkboard splash. And this is one that I used to run in my physical classrooms and now currently in my online classrooms. And so essentially it's just where you create a prompt and you ask your learners to respond, at the beginning of a class to get their ideas about something. And then students write their response and post it to the board, whether that's with a physical Post-it note or with our virtual Post-it note like we did today. And then the third step is we want to analyze, ask your learners to kind of look at everybody else's responses and what are some of the similarities, what are the differences, and what are the surprises. And that allows kind of some common themes to emerge, and that serves as sort of a jumping off point to get into what you're going to talk about in your training or your course. Okay, so in this session today, we are going to focus on some learning strategies and some tools that help support those strategies in an online environment. Before we get into that, I kind of wanted to present you with a framework for thinking about how you're using technology in the classroom or you know, in your training environment or with your learners. And so there is this model called the SAMR model. And basically any technology using educators should be familiar or should know this this model. It's kind of foundational to technology integration in today's classrooms. And so the SAMR model is kind of broken into levels, with each letter corresponding with kind of a different way of thinking about how you're using technology in your classes. So the S, so it kind of starts, it's almost like Bloom's taxonomy if you're familiar, but it starts sort of with a lower level of technology integration, and then it kind of moves to a more evolved level. So you start with kind of just enhancement and move to transformation. So the S starts us off with substitution, and so that's just where you're using technology and there's not really a functional change. An example of this would be like if I had a paper-based worksheet and I turned it into a PDF copy and emailed it to students. The A stands for augmentation. So this is like, you're still kind of having a direct substitute, but there's some kind of functional improvement in using the technology. So this might be creating that digital worksheet, but then adding a link to a website in one of the resources or something so that students can then click on it and then be taken to another resource. The M stands for modification. And so this is where we get into kind of really looking at using technology to transform and enhance, more than enhance, transform the way that we're teaching. And so modification is like technology allows for significant task redesign. And so I'll give you an example of this that you will all be familiar with. Let's think about class discussion boards in classrooms. So you all have used a discussion board in our Moodle course. You might not realize it, but actually this is a significant task redesign using this very simple discussion board platform in Moodle. Think about how discussions would take place in a normal classroom environment. You know, you ask a question and the learners have to respond in real time with whatever resources they have in front of them. Whereas with a discussion online, it's not so reactionary, but students or learners have time to think and consider their responses, read through other responses, and then reply. And this is something that's not really necessarily possible in the actual physical classroom. And then with R, we have redefinition. And so this is thinking about like using technology in ways that allow for new tasks that are previously inconceivable, something you could never have done before. And so an example of this in what maybe an online classroom would look like is or any classroom, a virtual field trip. So maybe I want to take my learners to an art museum in Paris. You can do that through a lot of the tools they have online and like VR and whatever else. And so you can go on virtual field trips. Another idea or example of this would be inviting a guest speaker in. Maybe it's someone who is an expert in their field in the topic that you're teaching, but they live in Australia and your class is in Baltimore, Maryland. You can invite guest speakers from all around the world through the use of technology and really redefine what's happening in your classroom. So I presented that to you because I think it's useful to think about how we approach technology, how we're using it, but also to think about our current context. So teaching and learning in August 2020 is very, very different than any other time in history. And, you know, as an educator, it's been very hectic trying to get everything up and going, and this rapid transition to online learning. And it can feel very frustrating, and nobody has anything figured out fully, and you're kind of learning as you're going, and it's just all kind of very messy. But I think it's useful to think of things in terms of benefits and not deficits. And so I really would like for you to view this as an opportunity to like redefine. So looking at that SAMR model, how can you use technology and this opportunity to redefine what your trainings and classes look like and create learning experiences that weren't possible before? Because now you have this opportunity to use technology more with your learners. Okay, so I'm almost done kind of talking about all that stuff, but we're going to take a quick little commercial break here.
Emma. Huh? Emma. Emma.
Every day it's getting on my nerves.
Emma.
Oh, I'm
Emma.
begging you,
Emma.
leave me alone.
I see some laughter there. Okay, so that's a very simple little commercial, but I chose to show it for a very important reason. It's a cautionary tale. So before you start throwing technology into your courses, into your trainings, before you do any of that, think about your learners and think about your end goals before you start making decisions about your technology. It should be about the learners and the goals before it's about what fancy kind of technology am I going to use. So, you know, while technology can accomplish a lot, sometimes it doesn't replace things like a roll of toilet paper. And then the other cautionary kind of point that I would make is it's like I often hear people express that they get very overwhelmed with the amount of tools and information and stuff that's just out there and available. In order to not get overwhelmed, just choose one tool. I'm going to present you with a few more tools today, but just choose one. And like I always recommend for people to just choose the tool that feels most comfortable to you and that speaks to you and that you're like, I think I have an idea for that, and just stick with that one and learn it well, because with all of these different tools and strategies, there's many different ways that you can use one tool. So Padlet, for example, there's about 50 different ways that I could use that in my classroom. And so just sticking with one tool, learning it well, trying new things, and kind of incrementally growing and giving yourself space to do that. Instead of trying to like do everything at once. Okay, so I'm going to jump into some of our learning strategies and tools. And so the strategies and tools that I'm going to talk about are sort of like classroom agnostic. It doesn't matter if it's a single webinar, if it's a webinar series, if it's an online course, or if it's even if it's an in-person course. All of these things that I'll share with you are strategies and tools that are just good teaching and learning that you can use in any classroom environment. So the first strategy is one that we all know, and that is activating prior knowledge. And so this is a very important thing that we need to do with our learners kind of when they first come to us. And so this is kind of priming students for learning, finding out what they already know, And so, or what their opinions are about a topic already. So if you think about the example of this webinar, you know, the very first thing we did was I got your opinions on online teaching and learning, and you posted it to the Padlet. That primed you because you're like, okay, I know what we're going to start talking about. I'm starting to think about online teaching and learning. And then for me, it kind of helped me kind of survey the landscape for how people were feeling about this topic and where would be a good starting point. Also, it allows you to correct any misconceptions. So if you're asking students, like, what do they know about something a technical topic that you're teaching, you can see where they might have some misconceptions about something, and it'll allow you to kind of call attention to that, and it's a teachable moment in your class when you kind of find out what they already know or don't know. So the example that I gave to you in the beginning is a way that you can use a technology tool like Padlet to activate prior knowledge. And so I'll take this moment to also say that in the course in Moodle, there is what we are calling a tech tool playground. And so in the tech tool playground, that's really your opportunity to like look at some different tools and get some hands-on experience trying them out. And so we have a Padlet set up for you that you can go in and play with, and then you can actually try and create your own Padlets as well. So you'll get some hands-on experience. Unfortunately, you know, we only have an hour here, so it's a little bit more difficult to build in so much of that hands-on time. But in the course over this week, you'll have plenty of opportunities to really pick a tool and just get in there and play with it. Okay, so the second strategy that I'll talk about is when it comes to actually providing new information and instructing, giving students new information and instructing. And so chunking and modeling new information, so modeling of new skills or new information is very important for students when you're providing them with something brand new. So I'm going to show you how to well, let me take a step back and just make sure that we're all on the same page. So when I'm talking about chunking, chunking is a really important concept, especially when we think about online learning. But chunking is where you take kind of related pieces of information. So you have like a whole course or a whole training. You take related pieces of information and you break them into smaller pieces. And that helps students retain information better. So rather than presenting them with a huge, 20 pages of research or something, you kind of can take related concepts and break them into smaller bite-sized pieces, which helps students with retaining the information and understanding it better. It's just more digestible. And so taking your information that you want to present, chunking it in a way that makes sense, and also making sure to model it. So I'm going to show you how to do this using screencasting and then a tool called Edpuzzle. So screencasting, you can use a lot of different tools for screencasting, but when I say screencasting, I just mean screen recording. So if you guys do any kind of screen recording and there's a tool that you use, you can go ahead and just share it in the chat. But so like Screencastify is an example, Screencast-O-Matic. Most computers have actually built-in screen recorders. So like my Windows laptop can just record for me. So any way that you can record your screen, that's screencasting. Snagit is one, yeah. You just do a quick Google search, there's a million free ones out there. So what you would do, well, let me actually just jump in and show you Edpuzzle for a moment here. Zoom also allows you to record your screen. So you can use Zoom by yourself actually and just record your screen. And so that's another way to accomplish it. Okay, so there's this tool called Edpuzzle, which is one of my favorites. It's been around forever and ever. And what Edpuzzle does is it allows you to take a video and then kind of manipulate it and break it up into different chunks, and also build in some questions where you can check for understanding, or you can activate, prior knowledge by asking opinions about things. So it allows you to kind of take a video and really make it a little bit more interactive. So an example that I'll just show you here in Edpuzzle is this video about mortgages, which is just something I pulled off of their site. And so you'll notice that at the bottom, there are some of these different markers. So these markers are where I'm able to insert multiple choice questions or open-ended questions. And so what would happen is you would share the video with your learners and they would watch the video. Okay, so they watch the video up into a certain point and then the video will pause. And then you'll notice on the side here, there's this multiple choice question that kind of checks, did they just get what the person was talking about? And so the student would respond to the question and then submit it. Oh, I got it wrong. And then continue along to each question along in the video. So you can kind of pause and insert questions. So with Edpuzzle, you actually have several different options. If you have a topic that you're teaching that, maybe there's already existing content out there, that's great because then you can just kind of borrow from what already exists. So if I was teaching, I don't know why I can only ever think of mortgage, but if I was teaching mortgage concepts, I could look and see and do a search within the Edpuzzle platform. And Edpuzzle, you can search either previously created videos in Edpuzzle, or you can search YouTube, Khan Academy, National Geographic, TED Talks. So these are all different platforms that provide videos to Edpuzzle. So you can search for already existing videos, and that's what I did. So I just took someone else's video and then I used it. Like, let's say I want to use this video here. It's someone else created it. I can see what the different questions are if I like them, and then I just copy it for myself and can use it in my own course. But the other thing you can do is you can create your own videos. So if you all remember from course 1, hopefully you all watched the video that Jeff made in course 1. So let's say that I wanted to create a short video like that for my learners to provide new information, right? So I can create my video, and then what I can do is come to my content and I can add my own videos. You can see I also kind of played around with the webinar that some of you were on yesterday. But you can upload your own content. And then when I do that, this is where I can come in here and I can kind of manipulate it a little bit. So you have a few different options. You can cut a video. So if it's, for example, the webinar yesterday was 50 minutes. Maybe if I really wanted to focus in on one aspect of it, I can trim the video so that it's 10 minutes. If you find a video that you like, but maybe it's not appropriate for your learners, or maybe you have a Spanish speaking audience or something like that, you can do a voiceover and you can actually use your own voice over top of an existing video. And then the last thing that you can do is the questions piece. So then what you do is you just kind of come to the point in the video where you would like to insert a question, and then you would just click on the question, and then you would insert Okay, so I'm just going to kind of take a step back and revisit what we just talked about. And so how to use the strategies of modeling and chunking using screencasting and Edpuzzle. So the first thing you would do is create a screencast of your instruction using any number of screen recording tools. Then you would upload your video to Edpuzzle. You could also do YouTube and then that way, but it's just easier to upload it to Edpuzzle. So upload your video to Edpuzzle. Well, create your account and then upload your video. Then you would break your content into small segments of related content, chunking, or figure out kind of where does it make sense to stop, to pause, to check for understanding, and then insert your questions, either open-ended or multiple choice. And then the final step, once you've created it all, is you would share the video with your learners. So that's just a matter of sharing the link to the video. And so this can work, let's say I'm doing a live webinar like I am today, but I wanted to provide my learners with information before. So I would prime them and they would be ready as soon as we started the webinar. I could provide a link and ask them to watch it and complete it before the webinar in an email. I could also share it in my course through, the course page or discussion board or announcement or however you would want to do it. Or I could share it as a post-webinar kind of follow-up if you want to learn more, or post-webinar even assessment. Watch this final video and answer some questions and let's see what you learned. So that's sort of the process and how I would use screencasting and Edpuzzle together in a course. Okay, the next strategy we're going to talk about is kind of collaborative social learning. And so allowing learners for time to be collaborative and also collaborative in groups allows them to kind of talk through the new knowledge that they have and make connections to their existing knowledge. And then also allowing them to not only make connections to themselves, but also to others and other elements of the topic, which actually kind of grows and expands these knowledge networks. Of course, collaborative social learning is learner-centered, which we always want to be, and it's active by nature. So it's less lecture and more student do first learning. And then, so one thing I want to touch on is one way that you can promote collaborative social learning in your classes is to ask students, is peer teaching, is to ask students to teach others. And this is one of my favorite strategies to use when I'm teaching, because it allows for students to process content more deeply than they would in many other ways. And the reason for that is because when you tell someone that, okay, you're going to take this information and you're going to teach someone else about it, when you have something with the expectation that you're then going to have to translate it to others and teach others, you think about the information differently than if it was just for yourself. If I'm learning something and I'm just keeping it in my own brain, I don't maybe think about it in quite such a dynamic or from different perspectives. But if I know that I'm going to have to then teach other people how to do something or about a certain topic, I have to think about how do I order it, how do I structure it so that it makes sense to other people. And so you think about it in new and different ways. And it's just it's a great strategy to use to teach and learn information. And then also as the teacher, you can just kind of kick back and put your feet up because the students are doing all the work. Okay, so one of the best tools that, I've probably Google tools are the first tools I started using when I started using technology in the classroom many, many years ago. And they still are probably some of the best tools for collaborative learning opportunities. So hopefully, I think most people are probably familiar, and even Microsoft Office has a version of like kind of these collaborative Office docs, but there are document slides, sheets, and even maps that you can collaborate with many people in one one document in live time. And so when in the past or in your face-to-face classes, you might have like a sticky paper with, you know, where people are writing their responses together collaboratively. This would be kind of the digital version of that. So a couple of ways that you can use Google tools. One would be to create group presentations. So to put students into groups and have them all collaborate on a group presentation that they would then teach to other people or share with other people. Another idea is to create a kind of like a group jigsaw or a group information sharing activity. So this is an example of one that I actually used in my own class in many years ago in a lesson that we had to do. And so the way that I did this is I just created my document and then I just took a real simple approach to breaking up my groups. So if you have a last name with A through F, you're in group 1 all the way down to group 4. And then each group had different bits of information that they were responsible for learning and then sharing with the rest of the group as a whole. And so if this is a webinar, let's say, what I might do is then break students up into breakout rooms in their different groups. They can talk about it, digest the information, and then when you all come back together for like a whole group debrief, everybody has all of their answers, you know, right here ready to go. It would be the same idea as if I asked all the groups to come to the front of the class and stick their chart paper up, but now it's all here where you can kind of do a group debrief all in one document. And so in order to do that, when you have your Google Doc, when you would share it, you would share it so that anyone can edit the document. Or if you knew in advance who your learners were with their emails, you could just add them to the document in that way as well. And then another thing that you can do with Google Tools is with Google Tools My Maps. I don't know if any of you have used it before, but you can create your own maps. And I know that a lot of you doing kind of community-based work with maps and really incorporate maps into your courses. So this is a great tool. So if you just go to Google My Maps, you can create new maps that you're able to edit different points in the map. And you can also share this map with other people so that you can have a group maybe creating like a tour of a community or something in their map. And you can, when you create your, let me just show you really quickly. When you create a point in a map, you can type it in or stick it. You can give your point a title, and then you can even add photos, you can add links, you can do all sorts of things to like personalize this map. So this is a great collaborative group activity through a Google Map. And then the last one I'll share, this one you will have the opportunity to kind of check this out in the course. But like I like a collaborative class book, and so I just use Google Slides to do this. And the really important thing to note here is that on the very first part of the slide or the document or wherever it is, you want to provide instructions for use, because if it's an openly editable resource, then you want to make sure that people are using it in the correct way. But you can create something where each student would have one slide where they would create and share content or information. I actually did this with recipes with a class once where they all shared different recipes from their youth. It was pretty neat. Where am I going here? Okay, so those are just a couple of ideas where you can use these collaborative documents, sheets, maps, or whatever. So a couple of tips when you're doing this. One is to generate your groups in advance, or think through how you're going to generate your groups. So like I use the last name, but if you have the names in advance, you can create your student groupings. And then if you're using spreadsheets, you know, it kind of you want to think about how can I create a physical space for different groups if I'm going to be working from one document, let's say. So spreadsheets, you know, kind of naturally have cells and columns, so you designating those to different groups or people. Tables in documents, or individual slides, assigning slides to either individuals or to groups, help create that physical space for groups in a document. And then the last tip I'll share with you is one of my favorite quick and easy tips is if I want to share a document with the whole class that, you know, if I just share it and make it editable, then anyone can change it. Maybe I want, like I did with you guys today, to create like a thought catcher or something like this. One really quick tip to make sure that students are able to make a copy for themselves is when I come to the URL at the top, the very last part says edit. If I actually just change that to copy, what happens is when I share this link with students or with people, it automatically prompts them to make a copy of the document. So they have their own copy that they then own. And you know, you don't have to worry about them having edit access or not being able to edit. So if you have a, you know, like a worksheet or something like that you wanted to share with students, but you wanted them all to have their own unique copy, it's very easy to just change the last part of the URL from edit to copy, and it will automatically prompt them to do that. Okay, so I want to pause for a moment, and now that we've kind of talked about some collaborative tools, collaborative documents, sheets, maps, how could you use something like this in your own course or training? And then you can post your ideas in the chat if you want to share them. But just taking a moment to really connect this to your own environment and think about how you would do this in your course or training. Yeah, I mean, that's a really simple way. Have people have a slide that would have been a flip chart. I mean, that's really the most basic use, and it's a very easy way to kind of translate something that you would have done on a flip chart into the digital environment so that everybody, you know, group debrief sessions all together. Definitely with the maps to introduce themselves, you'll see an example of that in the course actually. Wow, lots of really good ideas. Yeah, Google Forms for quizzes is good too, Laura, but I just don't have enough time to talk about all the tools. Okay, so I'm going to move to kind of the last tool here in the session, and I just again want to take a moment to like remind everyone. I know for some it's like a lot of new information and different tools and ideas, but just thinking about, I'm just presenting you with some options, and really I want you guys to just hone in on one thing that that makes most sense to you and makes most sense for your course or your trainings. Okay, so we're going to talk about the last piece kind of at the end of a course maybe, or the end of a session. So how do I create meaning through dialogue, questioning and reflection? So these are some ways that you might do this in your courses, you know, things like storytelling or digital storytelling. So having students share an experience and record themselves while doing it, either by audio or video. A lot of you I know use kind of simulations or case studies or role plays. So we'll talk about how we might do that with technology. Actually, a really great strategy is asking students to pose questions. So having them think about, okay, what's a question that you still have about the topic, but posing those questions maybe on a discussion board and having other students respond to them is a great way to have, you know, learner-centered kind of questioning happening. And then hypotheticals are also one of my favorite ways to kind of allow students the opportunity to think more deeply about a topic and reflect on things. So like, what would happen if, or how would something change if, and allowing students to respond to those hypotheticals can be another really great way to deepen understanding of a concept. And then there's always the MVPI, which is what was the most valuable piece of information that you learned. So this is a good way that you can kind of promote reflection on what students learned in a course. You can ask them to really think about what's the most valuable thing I learned in this course, and how am I going to use this going forward? And so I want to talk about a tool that can kind of help support all of these different tools, or different strategies, I'm sorry. Okay, so there's this really fun tool called Flipgrid. And what Flipgrid is it's a video-based discussion board. So if you think about our discussion board in our course, right, it's all text, very text heavy with threaded discussions, but it's all text. Flipgrid allows for a more kind of personalized discussion that is video based. So there's so many different ways you can use Flipgrid, but the way that it works is you would come as the instructor or the facilitator teacher, you would come and you would create a board, right? So my board is the NWA faculty PD. And then within this, I give my class access, and then I can create different topics for students. So this is where I would pose my discussion question, for example. You guys are actually going to have the opportunity to respond to a Flipgrid in the course, in the Moodle course, in the Tech Tool Playground. And so what you'll do when you go to try it out is I created for us a post called 2 Truths and a Lie. I think most of you are probably familiar with this. It's a pretty common icebreaker that many people use when they're kind of facilitating sessions and trainings. But we're going to do video-based 2 Truths and a Lie because we can't, sit down together in a classroom and do this. And so the way that it works is the learner will go to the Flipgrid, and then they record their response. I'm not going to be able to really show you because I'm also using my camera for Zoom, but you would record a response. When you record your response, you can add little emojis. You can get very creative with it, or you can just do like a basic video-based response. The other thing that you can do, so if you think about a discussion board, students are able to respond to each other's posts. You can do that in Flipgrid as well. So when you come, what we'll ask you to do is tell us 2 truths and a lie about yourself. And then we have to guess which one is the lie. But then you also will watch everyone else's videos, and you can respond and make a guess about what is the lie for them. And so like when I come in and I come to a video, so here's Jeff's, what I can do is record a response. And so I can respond to him with a video response as well. I can also if I don't want to do a video response, I could also just leave a comment. I think the video responses are fun though. So it's like reimagining a discussion board to where you're able to have these asynchronous video discussions. So we don't all have to be available at the same time, same place in the same time like we are right now, but we can still have that personal element where we're able to, talk on camera with other people. So that's Flipgrid. And let me pop back over here. And so basically the steps involved in creating video discussions with Flipgrid is you would create a topic and a prompt, and it's really important that you provide posting guidelines. So just like we do in a discussion board, I want you to create a video post and then respond to 2 classmates, or I want you to create a video post by Wednesday and respond by Friday. So kind of creating those posting guidelines for learners to follow. And then after you create your topic, you can set your access control. And so you can either create it so that learners sign up for the board, or you can create it so that you have it password protected so that it's not kind of just out there floating around. And so the way that I did it with this course is when you go to the Tech Tool Playground in Moodle, you'll see a link and then you'll see a access password that you'll have to use that I created. It's a very simple, you know, it's like NWA something for the password. But so you would do that. So you'd share that with the learners. And then you would record your own response and then also making sure to respond to other people's responses. One more thing that I just remembered that's pretty cool in Flipgrid. So this is what the students would see. This is what the learners will see, right? But from the teacher perspective, I can go in and I can actually do a whole bunch of different things. So if I wanted to, if I wanted to hide a response, if I wanted to add it to a mixtape. So a mixtape is like basically you can highlight the responses that you really like. So this would be the same thing as highlighting after group work and you have kind of the whole session debrief. You might choose to highlight a few choice examples. You can do this with this tool as well by kind of creating mixtapes. The other thing I can do is you'll notice now in the teacher view, I have some different options. So I can provide, actually I can provide private feedback to someone if I don't want it to be available to the whole class. If you choose to grade, so like, I think that this would be really useful if you were to do like role plays or scenario type things. You could have students pretend to respond to something and then you could provide them kind of some private feedback in this way. So for our kind of final stop and think, I want you to think about what are the benefits of offering video or audio-based asynchronous discussions with a tool like Flipgrid. And there's also a tool that you'll see in the course that you can do the same thing, but no video, it's just audio. But like, what are the benefits of doing it this way versus just text-based, the way that it's set up currently in our Moodle? And then if you want to share your responses, you can put those in the chat. Some people would rather do personal connections. Yeah, audio and video is great for people with visual issues, yeah. It's like getting the class to get up and move. I love that. So, I mean, I think that's a really great idea that like, it's important to kind of vary the things that we do with our learners. And so if every single course was discussion boards and, you know, 4-hour webinars, it might get a little bit boring. We need to ask our learners to get up and move. And so this is kind of like how we would get our learners to get up and move when, you know, we're not all physically together in a room. Okay, so I presented you guys with a variety of different options and tools. Again, you know, now I know it's a lot at once. Now you have time to kind of step back, choose one to focus on. Once you get into the Moodle course, if you haven't already been there, you'll get to the Tech Tool Playground where you're able to go in and experiment with the tools. And then actually your portfolio assignment, your culminating assignment in this course is that you're going to choose one of the tools, and it can either be one of the tools I presented here, or it can be a tool that you learned about somewhere else. You know, it's pretty open. But then think about how you might create something for your own course using one of these tools and really thinking through the planning of that. So we have 1 more minute left, and so before you run out of the classroom, the course is open in Moodle if you haven't logged in. And so we're doing it a little bit differently in course 2. So in course 1, you know, you had these big discussion board with the whole group. We have quite a few learners in this class. So your discussions will be in small groups. So they'll be broken up into smaller groups where you'll participate. And it's already been assigned and it's set up for you guys. Please be sure to post your initial response by Wednesday. and then respond to your peers by Friday. The guidelines are there. And then we will have there's also a whole group course discussion board where you'll kind of reflect, and that'll be due on Sunday after you've kind of had a chance to go through the course content. And then in terms of your assignment for this course, when you're doing it, I really encourage you to share before you submit it, it's due next Monday, but before you submit it, share it with your group for feedback and allow them to actually try out what you've created. If you create a Padlet or an Edpuzzle or something like that, ask your group to use it as if they were your learners, so they can give you feedback and you can kind of see how it might work in a real classroom environment. And that is all I have for today. So thank you guys for your participation today, and we will see you in the course online.